Japan has a whole host of issues. A lot of it is down to the fact that it has an aging population and a low birth rate. And also, it's seen its currency really subdued, which has impacted when it's selling abroad. It's not making as much money as it was. The dollar has been particularly strong. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about when the Bank of Japan might change the interest rates, which have been historically low. They are still battling with inflation, and all of that is having a knock on to consumer confidence. And in fact, we've just had some latest figures today which suggest that even now the economy is not recovering quite as quickly as the government there might like.
Well, the UK has also long faced ongoing economic headwinds. What's been the main contributing factor there?
Yeah, absolutely. The UK has been bumping along the bottom of the barrel for a good couple of years now. It really has been flatlining economically and has now slipped into a technical recession. There are a number of issues that are responsible for that, and some of them are the same as the issues that we are seeing in Japan. So we have an aging population here in the UK as well. We've really struggled with inflation, which has driven up interest rates, which have really taken their toll on the economy. So all of those things have really impacted, and add to all of that the impact of Brexit, the additional cost of bringing stuff in. We import quite a lot of goods here in the UK, particularly things like food, and that has made life quite difficult for a lot of people.
Well, what does Prime Minister Rishi Sunak need to do, or what needs to happen to help turn the economy around and also fulfil Mr Sunak's pledge to grow the economy?
Yes, he did manage to meet one of those pledges, which is to halve inflation by the end of the year, although in terms of the government, what part it played, very limited. Look, the chances are that Rishi Sunak is only going to have a limited amount of time to try and turn the economy around. We are in an election year. We are expecting an election at least by the end of the year. So it could be another party that has to take over this situation. We've got a budget in just a couple of weeks' time. There's a lot of talk that there may be tax cuts which could help stimulate economic growth, but it is a balancing act because, of course, if you put extra money back into people's pockets, it could reignite inflation, which is still kindling away in the background.
Meanwhile, is most of the euro area expected to avoid a downturn?
It is pretty tricky at the moment, and you were mentioning there that Japan has fallen now behind Germany in terms of the world's third largest economy. It is also flirting with recession for a lot of the same reasons that Japan and the UK are also struggling. Consumers have just been really struggling with rising prices. They haven't been buying stuff. And when you think of Japan with all of its computers and its electronic vehicles, then those are the kind of things that people have really decided that they're not going to spend on at the moment. And Germany has had a similar issue, battered, of course, as well by those rising prices for energy, which came about because of the war in Ukraine. Whether or not the rest of the Eurozone will escape recession, I think a lot of that has to do with how quickly the European Central Bank decides to cut interest rates.
And I know this is a big area to talk about, but what about the rest of Asia and perhaps focus on us here in Australia? Are there any signs that countries in this region might follow suit into a recession?
Look, when you have global recessions, when you have countries like Japan and the UK, potentially Germany in recession, then it does impact consumer confidence. It does impact the amount of stuff that people are buying. So, of course, it is something that places like Australia do need to keep a close eye on. That said, for Australia, a lot of the issues which, the UK and Japan have been dealing with, you're not dealing with. You have quite a robust population in terms of growth. So that is one area where perhaps I think you don't need to have cause for concern. But remember, the huge global economic engine, China, that has really struggled post-COVID. Since those lockdowns came to an end, it hasn't recovered as we expected that it would. And though the IMF suggests that it will grow by 5.4% over the past year, remember we've been used to double digits. And I think that that is something which will have far more impact on the economy in Australia and the surrounding area than what's happening here in the UK.
So what's in store then for China in the year of the dragon, and what measures need to be rolled out to stimulate more domestic consumption?
It is a difficult balancing act, and a lot of it has been philosophical in terms of the measures that have been put in place, increased regulation on the private sector. And clearly we know that the property sector in particular, companies like Evergrande have really struggled, and all of that is weighing down China's economy. Also, its relationship with the United States. We know there's been a lot of talk about what potentially could happen if Donald Trump returns to the White House, but a lot of those tariffs that he put in place when he was in his first term have remained in place under Joe Biden. So I think at the moment, China is trying to attract inward investment. It is trying to bolster the economy, reshore confidence, but it's a long road ahead.
And just finally, in the Middle East, how are economies there being impacted by the war in Gaza?
Yes, I mean, that is having a big impact on economies, not just in the Middle East, but of course the situation with shipping in the Red Sea is having huge implications for the rest of the world. It is a crucial link between Asia and Europe, and it is putting on additional time and additional costs to take it around Africa instead. We know that there's a lot of concern about the potential that that might also reignite inflation in the Eurozone. But we have had an update from mining giant Rio Tinto this morning. Although its profits have fallen substantially, it has said it's not being materially affected by the situation in the Red Sea. So I guess it depends on how long these tensions continue and how long the extra cost of shipping continues as well.
Danni Hewson, thank you so much for wrapping up global economies for us in that short amount of time. Really appreciate talking to you.
Thank you.